Welcome to Balance Insights, the podcast where we explore how individuals like you find balance in all aspects of life and work. I'm your host, Sierra, here to share strategies, stories, and insights that empower you to run your business more efficiently, prioritize health and wellness, and make room for what truly matters. Each episode, we dive into topics like mindfulness, productivity, taking intentional time off, and everything in between. Because finding balance isn't just a goal, it's a lifestyle. Join me as we uncover actionable tips and inspiring stories to help you achieve harmony in business and life. Let's find balance together. Welcome back to Balance Insights, everyone. Today we have a very, very special guest, Maggi Colwell of Chiron Art Therapy, who is a board certified art therapist. Maggi, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate you for taking time out of your busy schedule today.
Thank you for having me, Sierra.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, Maggi and I met probably back in, I think, August at an event at the Chamber, the Be Your Best Self conference. And we met offsite a few weeks after that. And we connected and we talked about her coming on to the podcast. And she shared so much about her business, which is incredible. And so, Maggi, I want you to take the opportunity and just let the viewers know a little bit about yourself and about what you do.
Sure. Well, I'm a licensed art therapist, which is a type of mental health counseling. But instead of doing talk therapy, which people may be more familiar with, what I do with my clients is we're doing activities, movement, and using art materials to be able to explore how they feel and what's going on in their lives. So it's one of those things where people don't have to be able to have art talent to be able to do. It's more about the movement and expression and creating a space for, what am I feeling right now? What's coming up? Is this challenging?
Yeah.
Those kind of things.
Yeah, I love that. So you had mentioned to me before that you had an extensive career in commercial insurance and risk management. So can you tell us what motivated you to transition into the art therapy field?
Well, it was kind of like a serpentine path, where in undergrad, I majored in fine art, but I found out that that wasn't a job. And then I'm like, oh, I need a job.
Yeah.
So I found a job, which wound up being commercial insurance. And I did that for 15 years. But it wasn't really my thing. I was good at it. It was lucrative, but I was bored.
Yeah.
And if you're in a career where you're just bored all the time, it starts to eat at you.
Oh, for sure.
So I finally got to a point where I was like, I need to make some life changes, and decided to go back to grad school to be an art therapist. I said, you know what? I want to be creative and I want to help people. So that made sense to be in the next step.
No, that's amazing. So what are some of the challenges that you faced during that transition period?
I had to kind of redefine myself. For a while, I was still dressing like I was in insurance. And I had to learn to like let that go. I actually had a client who was 17 and he always cut right to the chase. And he's like, Maggie, why are you dressed like that? And I'm like, I'm being professional. And he's like, but you're an art therapist. Fair enough. Fair enough. So it was kind of like giving myself allowance to be myself and make sense and kind of roll with things. And kind of a relaxing into who I really am. So it's been a lot of like taking the emergency brake off.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Just transitioning into being a business owner, it was very difficult because I had that 9 to 5 mindset, and I did. Still showed up dressed like I was going to, going into my corporate job, and I had the schedule, and I had to. It was definitely a transition period where I had to say, hey, you're the boss. So I understand for sure. Now, we talked about financial therapy and you incorporating it into your practice. Can you tell us a little bit about how you incorporate that and how you tie it into art therapy?
I think money is one of the most taboo subjects.
Oof, yes, it is.
Where people don't talk about it and they kind of skirt around it and they're like, oh, I'm stressed, but what about it?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, like let's not go there. And a lot of times when people are stuck with their budgeting, or they have like a big life transition, like a divorce, or somebody dies, and they're like, how do I manage my money now?
Yeah,
um there's a lot of emotions that goes along with that.
for sure.
So that's when it's appropriate to have a therapeutic space. Some of the things I've done with people is have them explore that, like draw out your relationship with money. If money was a person,
Yeah.
what would that look like? How do you feel about it? Like, you know, what is your relationship? And a lot of times when people can then like have some distance and look at it, they're like, oh,
Yeah,
like there needs to be like a direct
for
conscious
sure.
relationship.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like that. So, in your practice, you incorporate the Jungian influence and dream analysis. Can you tell us and explain how, what your approach and, how do you incorporate that in your practice?
Absolutely. Well, right now I am training in Switzerland to become a Jungian
Yes,
analyst.
yeah,
So this is kind of an ongoing
yeah,
project for me. And some of the things that you might be familiar with, that Jung originally came up with, are things like archetypes,
hmm,
where we're talking about the energy patterns underlying human behavior,
yeah.
um, and shadow work. That's kind of a big term right
Yeah,
now.
it is.
And those are all the things that you're not consciously aware of.
Mm-hmm.
It's where your blinders are, it's where your blind spots are. And a lot of times it's power or talent that you have
Yeah,
that you've shoved away
yeah,
because it wasn't allowed. So we work on, through dream work, we say, okay, what's the symbolism here?
mhm,
How does this attach to the patterns in your life? And it helps people get closer to being able to look at those blind spots that they keep on like kind of knocking into
for
and
sure.
tripping over,
Yeah,
so that they can make sense of what's in their way.
for sure. Now, why do you think that's important in personal healing?
Um, I think it's real easy for us to say, here's my goal. This is the direction I want to go in. And these are my habitual issues.
Yeah,
But when it's unconscious, there's a part of you that says, I'm not looking at that. No, no,
yeah,
no, don't.
for sure.
Grief.
Yeah. Oh,
Like,
yeah, I know about
don't
this
make
one.
me
Oh,
deal with that.
yes.
Um, so that's, in my opinion, the role of therapy is being able to broaden your consciousness to be able to say, let's actually look at these parts that you're not looking at.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. Now, of course, without breaking any confidentiality,
Mhm.
are you able to give us an example of how that worked for a client, or you have a specific project
Hmm.
that?
Okay. Here's a good example. Um, a lot of what was holding me back in my own business,
Mhm.
were a lot of things that my dad had always said to me when I was a kid.
Okay.
Don't be weird. Get a real job.
Uh,
Um, there was a lot of expectations for perfectionism
yeah.
of like, what do you mean you got a 98%?
Nobody.
Like, that's not a joke. Like he's laughing, it's not funny.
Yeah.
Those kind of pieces,
Yeah.
and they weigh on kids.
Oh, for sure. Oh, absolutely. I've dealt with that myself.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
perfectionism.
And I even had issues when I was starting to run my business where he was like, "You're lazy and unemployed. What are you doing?"
Oh, yeah.
So it took me a very long time to quit my part-time job.
Mm,
Even though I wasn't making much money at the hospital I was working in, and I was very, very stressed
yeah.
because I had that in the back of my head, you have to keep a real job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so it finally got to where it was like, this is the image of my dad in my head holding me back.
Mm,
And I do not have time to go any further unless I let this go.
yeah. Oh,
And had to be able to do that. But I wasn't thinking about it in those terms while I was like, but I'm not making enough money. I can't quit my job. And it's like, working for yourself will be just as stable as this underpaying high stress job.
Yeah, no, that hit home for me as well. Just transitioning, and you hear the comments about, "What do you mean? What are you going to do if you're, working for yourself?" And just having that level of perfectionism. I mean, I grew up. I always had to make sure I got good grades and straight A's and graduate valedictorian, and that weighed. It continues to weigh on me. So I probably need a little therapy with Maggie. But I say all that to say I do understand, I understand how you have to let go of that so that you can kind of step into your next for sure.
Yeah.
So what can you tell us about what typical sessions look like um, you know, with you?
It changes a lot based on the person,
Yeah.
and what they need. For some of my clients, we will talk more about the images in their dreams,
Hmm.
because that's at the forefront of their minds.
For sure.
And for other clients, we'll stick all with the art. For some people, it's like, especially with trauma,
Yeah.
they've been through something big. They're like, it's terrible. What
Yeah.
do you want me to say about it? Like, there are no words.
Yeah.
So being able to do something with your hands, not have to like dredge it up and talk about it, or if somebody doesn't remember something, to be able to say, okay, this is what the feeling looks like.
Hmm.
This is how my body feels. And being able to just kind of play,
Right.
with abstract art
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes even just two people sitting together and talking about, this image makes me feel like this,
Hmm.
and having somebody else recognize that
Right.
is enough.
Yeah. It is.
um
Yeah, I can see that. Are there like specific benefits or key benefits to creative expression when, as people are dealing with trauma, grief, or, whatever they have going on in their lives?
yeah, first of all, you don't have to remember what happened.
Yeah.
And that's true for a lot of people.
Hmm.
It's like, I don't remember my childhood. I don't know, that kind of thing. The other thing is that when you're doing art and you're doing things with your hands and moving, you're activating the emotional centers of your brain,
Mm.
which are much closer to the visual centers. And that's where trauma is stored. That's why there's flashbacks.
Mm.
So when you've got that part of your brain active, then you can actually start connecting this image, this emotion. Oh, this is how I feel.
Mhm.
And being able to connect that back to your logical self again.
Yeah,
Um, that's why a lot of times talking doesn't get you there.
for sure. No, I can see that. Now you lead in-person art therapy groups as well.
Mhm.
So, can you tell us about those sessions and the goal of these, sessions and why they are so impactful?
My current group is for middle aged women,
Okay.
and we are looking at one, changes during perimenopause and menopause,
Mhm.
and them redefining who they are.
Mm.
A lot of them have childhood trauma.
Mhm.
And so they're still trying to say, how do I communicate my needs? How do I set boundaries?
Mm.
How do I regulate my nervous system?
Wow.
Because they're overwhelmed and they're having symptoms like anxiety and depression that come from the trauma.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, and saying, okay, I've been grinding, grinding, grinding my whole life. Where am I in this?
Ooh. Mm.
And we're building their identity
Yeah.
with the art,
Okay.
because when you start making things, it reflects back on I'm making me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. Now, you mentioned how, some of your clients won't need to regulate their nervous system. Are there specific, suggestions or, what do you tell them or, kind of how do you guide them to regulate their nervous system?
Some of it's through breath work.
Okay.
A lot of times we're getting up and moving.
Hmm.
Um, we are paying attention to physical sensations. And I think that's something that we don't have a lot of language for.
Hmm.
We're not encouraged to say, what does that feel like inside your body?
Hmm.
You're supposed to be thinking.
Yeah.
So to say, it feels heavy, or I feel twisted, like those kind of language pieces start to reconnect you
Mm-hmm.
so that you're no longer dissociated.
Yeah.
Because a dissociation is just saying like, okay, I'm not here. I don't want to feel this. It's too big.
Yeah.
But if you have a place where you can start to say, and this is what my body actually feels and have language for it, then it starts to feel safe again inside your body.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that. So you mentioned that you're committed to supporting diverse identities. So can you talk to us about this approach and how this value shapes your practice?
I've had a lot of people across the gender spectrum
Hmm.
in my practice.
Hmm.
Um, I feel like people define who they are in their own terms. And I have no idea what somebody's values are
Yeah.
and what they think is a good life. This is a Jungian concept too,
Okay.
of each individual is defining for themselves who they are, what their values are, and how the community and the world affect them.
Hmm.
So um, they get to decide how do they define it.
Right.
And art therapy is always asking like, what does this mean to you? Um, can you share um, what like this pattern means or how your experience is
Sure.
um without any kind of judgment there,
Yeah, that's key.
and recognizing that this is kind of something that like typical psychotherapy kind of has been slow to catch up to,
Yeah.
is saying that a lot of it is based on the environment too,
Hmm.
that isn't changeable. You
Right.
can't just
Just
good attitude your way through it sometimes.
yeah, for sure. No, I agree with you 100%. Now, are there any emerging trends in the art therapy space that you foresee or that that may be coming up in the future?
Art therapy is a growing field.
Yeah.
And I feel like, for example, like uh, art therapist just got licensure last year
Mm.
after a 40-year
Wow.
fight.
Wow.
So I think there's going to be continued to have more access,
Hmm.
where it's not just grant funded, where insurances are able to cover it as well.
Hmm.
So I think that's going to continue to be a trend across the country,
Hmm.
if I'm thinking long term.
For sure. Now, do you have any personal goals that you see this year and like just for your practice or just as an art therapist in general? What are your goals and how do you want to kind of continue to promote this in the community and
Personally, I'm really trying to focus on my art therapy group,
Yeah.
because I think it's special. A lot of times, it's not offered outside of a hospital setting.
Yeah.
So that's a real resource that I'm focusing on. Um, Bigger scale, I'm continuing to advocate with legislators so that we can maybe get insurance
Yeah.
reimbursement. The first chance that we think we're going to be able to do that is at the end of this year.
Okay.
So,
Well, that's
um,
something to look forward to.
yeah, we got to
I mean, I think
keep at it.
that'll definitely take business to a whole new level if insurances are able to reimburse you back for sure. No, I fingers crossed for that for you. Now, if they're thinking about getting into art therapy, or do you have any advice for someone who's looking to get into the industry?
Hmm. Definitely do some volunteering.
Okay.
We work with a very diverse population.
Mm-hmm.
So, being able to do some volunteering, meet some people, see it in action, I think is a great way to start. A lot of art therapists work very high stress jobs, and making sure that that's what you really want to do,
Mm-hmm.
I think is a good place to start with.
Excellent. Now that's amazing advice. So before we end, I always like to talk to my guests about balance. So the name of the podcast, of course, is Balance Insights. And I came up with the concept because I felt like I was just in hustle mode and, wearing so many hats and saying yes to everything. And I just was at a space that I could not find balance. And so I'm so it's so important to me to promote it to other entrepreneurs or even other individuals who are in corporate, of the importance of just kind of finding balance within yourself. So with that, what does balance mean to you? And how do you find balance in your with your schedule, with balancing, just you deal with a lot of individuals, and I'm sure that can be very heavy to you sometimes. And
Mhm.
so how do you bring yourself back to center and find balance?
Balance is dynamic to me. Like I have more energy in the summer than I
Oh,
do in the winter,
me too.
which means I always keep in mind when I say no to all the demands of the world, I'm saying yes to me.
Oh, yeah.
So if I'm feeling drained, then I need to go back to my art studio and do my own art, or
Mm,
maybe I need to sleep more. Um, and recognizing that I show up best to my life when I'm full of energy.
yeah, yeah.
So no matter how much I need to kind of walk my own talk, um, it doesn't matter if I'd already done some kind of self-care. If I need more, I need more.
Yeah. Are there specific self-care activities you like to enjoy?
Let's see. I'm very careful about making sure I always get to yoga.
Okay.
I get a lot of sleep. And my art practice is a key part of how I engage with my own spirituality,
Yeah.
as well as be able to process all the heavy stuff that I
Yeah.
carry around.
No, I love that. No, I think that's important. Everyone's self-care practices are completely different, but I think it's important to just kind of share, just because there may be someone who's out there and they don't know what to do. And so just giving them insight to, this is what I do. And maybe, they can try it, they may find value in it, they may not find value in it. So I always like to ask. And I like to ask for, new things to learn for myself as well. So Maggie, where can they find you? Can you share with us like where your website is, your social media? How can they get connected with you?
Absolutely. My website is columbusarttherapy.com.
Okay.
And on social media, it's Chiron Art Therapy. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and that's CHIRON.
Okay. All right. Well, Maggie, this has been very therapeutic for myself, and I'm sure our viewers love this conversation. It was amazing. So I appreciate you for taking time out of your busy schedule to sit down and discuss about, art therapy and about your business. So, and I look forward to being able to connect with you in the future as well. So that is it for this week's episode of Balance Insight. I thank you so much for tuning in. Please, please make sure that you are following Maggie on all social media platforms. Check her out on YouTube and visit her website. And if you are someone who is interested in art therapy, please make sure you connect with Maggie. Thank you so much, and you have an amazing rest of your day.